Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture. And before I introduce my guest, I do want to remind everybody there are links up above for his Kickstarter, Buy Me a Coffee, and my Cash App link. And you have to support indie. So without further ado, I am welcoming comic creator Jim Tanner, the creator and writer behind Dig Two Graves, which is all about revenge, which is my favorite topic. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, I am very excited because obviously I've read parts of this and I'm new to this series, but I've enjoyed what I've seen of it so far. And I actually got the Kickstarter for, I guess, Volume 2, Issue 2. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's the second part to it. And before we get into Volume 2 and what's going on, what is the basic premise of Dig Two Graves? And I sort of tipped off my hat because it's about revenge.
Yeah, so Dig Two Graves is the story of this soldier named Miranda who kind of comes home. She's trying to reacclimate to civilian life, and then just suddenly her family is gunned down in the streets. And that's just how issue one ends. So from starting on issue two, which is where we are now, she's starting to kind of pull the pieces together to figure out what actually happened. So the reader has to kind of go on this journey with her. They don't know why specifically things are happening until she finds out.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. We're going to dive into it, and I'm going to try to do as much spoiler free as possible because I do want people to pick up both issues of this book, and I want people to back the Kickstarter. But one of the things that I liked about this book is that obviously I grew up in the 90s, but the 70s and the 80s really have a certain vibe to it, and this book definitely has a 70s, 80s, not soft type of book, element to it. It's got that old comic vibe to it. It's got that old, violence type stuff, Kill Bill sort of esque. And so, what was that like for you to want to go down that path and that style? Because that's something that this book does really, really well. I feel is that it has a very interesting vibe versus, a book that's set in modern times.
Yeah, and that's actually the perfect way to put it. I'd say I'm a big movie guy myself, so uh, the series I love movies like Mad Max, more obscure ones like Rolling Thunder, Miss 45. These are all revenge genre films, and it's totally. I wanted to kind of capture that feel of those gritty '70s, '80s revenge movies, but give it a twist. Yeah, a little bit modern. Take away like the superhero aspect in a sense of how some revenge stories the character can just be a one person army, and we try to bring it back down to earth a bit, but while keeping that grittiness you would have saw like say in something like Death Wish or something like that.
And I love it. In which I think the '70s and the '80s, as far as revenge and that genre, is the perfect element for it. I think, and you hit it right on the nail of setting the story in that tone. And then furthermore, obviously, I used to work in Washington D.C. I used to work for VSOs, which is Veteran Service Organizations, and so obviously, I like the fact that you picked a soldier. And I think it's safe to say that she's dealing with some form of PTSD, and that she sort of has her rock, which is her husband. She's got her kid, and then she's putting things back together and she's struggling to do so. And then you add on the element where her family gets killed, and that's sort of what's going on. And so what was that like? Building her character out, adding the level of her being deployed and being a soldier, her rock gets taken away, because that's a very interesting thing that's going on. And obviously a lot of stuff can come out of that. So what was that like, really building her character up? Because it's a very interesting character to throw into a story, and if you don't do it the correct way, it could go wrong very quickly.
Right. I'm from a military family. I myself didn't serve, but a lot of my family did, and a lot of my friends did. I've had a lot of friends who were deployed, who came back and have been dealing with PTSD, and I wanted to share that story. So in my writing, um, I did a lot of research with them to make it as authentic as possible. I didn't want somebody from the military to read it and say that wouldn't how it be, because a lot of times when you see PTSD in the movies, they treat it as kind of a just one. I guess they treat it kind of in one way, and it's usually kind of like a quick topic, and then they kind of brush over it. And I kind of want it to be as a part of her character, so that way they can see the effects that it can have on people. And like I said, it affects people differently. I've lost some friends to it, unfortunately. So again, for me, it's played a part in my life to the people that I consider very close. And again, that's why I wanted to incorporate that to the story. So uh, everybody can see that how it can affect anybody.
And you brought up a really interesting point. I think that it's important, writers, get the luxury of writing about things that they sometimes experience, and sometimes you get the luxury of writing about something you don't get to experience per se.
Yeah.
And obviously, when you're writing about something you haven't experienced, like PTSD, or there's a variety of other topics that I can name, but obviously this case is perfect with PTSD. How do you, and doing the research is super important, and making sure that you're actually hitting those points and being authentic, because that is super important in writing right now, and especially for an indie comic book. And so what was that like, even for you to say, hey, I actually now need to fully understand this in order to write about it? Because as a writer, you get creative licensing, but you also want to be respectful, especially with a topic like PTSD, to do a comparison that it's okay if the truth gets exaggerated. If you're writing about a porn star, it would be a little bit more free-flowing in many ways versus a soldier, and that's a big topic right now in the United States.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of it was just getting to know not just my friends, but they brought in other soldiers that they had served with and introduced me and allowed me to hear their stories and to hear what their struggles were. And I think for me, even up until just a few years back, you always kind of associated to how you saw it in the movies, which was usually like the Vietnam flashbacks. That was kind of how it was always portrayed, and I saw it in so many different ways how it can affect people, and just the depression that can hit, the personality changes. The guys I spoke with were very open how it affects them, um, and like I said, once I was writing, I took the story to them, and I told them this is what I want to do. This is the story, how it's going to progress, and then they told me, for them, this is, that's not how this would be. They gave me their examples, and then I took that and molded the character to make it a path that people who are struggling with these problems actually said, hey, this is how it affects me, and this is most likely the path I would take.
And obviously, even to go further off of this, obviously she is in a very, very unique situation,
Correct.
beyond what a soldier would be in. Obviously, I'm sure this story to some degree has happened where a soldier has come back. I mean, statistically, it has had to happen, and they lose their family. But I don't think this is the common story that a soldier is facing. Not to mention that during this gunning down situation, she winds up getting hit too and is sort of unconscious and wakes up somewhat confused on what happened. She's bleeding. And so obviously it goes even just beyond that, where now she is saying, hey, I'm messed up and now I want revenge. And so obviously she was being targeted. So what was that like? Because that sort of sets the entire tone of the comic in a lot of ways, is that, somebody obviously was gunning for her or not gunning for her for a reason.
Yeah, and part of, I mean, especially the opening, the shootout, or I should say, the gunning down of the family, is kind of the way of just showing the reader that it's going to, we're not holding back on certain things. So, and the character itself, she has, like, so the journey she's starting. Yeah, you're right. That is the start of it, and there's going to be a lot of stuff revealed as we go along. That's really going to. I'm trying to think of a way to say it without giving too much away.
It's going to expand her character.
Yeah.
And it's going to expand the world, and it's going to reveal some darkness. And maybe, people are more gray than black and white.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And one thing I do like about this series is I think we're touching on a lot of different themes that are going to really, I'm hoping, let people think. And again, like you said, it is a story, but there is some, there's elements to it. It's a story, so you want it to be, fun in a sense. So, there's going to be more elements to it that would never happen in real life. But it's as grounded as we can make it without making it too serious to the point of I just can't finish it, or too fantastical where nobody's going to ever believe it.
And then obviously I want to get into some more of the fun stuff of
Yeah.
this. Obviously she is a soldier. She is combat ready.
Yeah.
She's obviously dealing with this problem, and now she's realized that her husband and her kid is taken away from her. She is saying, who did this to them? Why did they do this? And well, she has a variety of skills at her disposal. And that's what makes this story, I think, really fun, is that she's now sort of, not necessarily acting like a mama bear and protecting her cub, but she's avenging her cub in many ways. And so what is that like? Because now you have a lot to play with, because obviously if she was deployed, and I don't know her full military background, but obviously if she was in combat, she has some skills that she could, shoot guns and hand-to-hand combat. And obviously she probably has some connections on finding people and tracking down people. And so obviously this is where the hunt and the revenge element starts coming in. And that's why picking a soldier is great. And you're picking a female soldier on top of that, which makes it into another level as well. And so what was that like building that and getting all those tools to play with? Because there's a variety of tools now that you have at your disposal because
Yeah,
of that setting.
yeah, and really in the first book, we introduced a couple characters. One of them being her father, who is himself he's dying of cancer, but he's a former CIA operative. So she has that element to pull from, and then of course she has her friends, her military friends, who would come to her aid, and that we introduced them late in the second book. So, and yeah, like I said, she is a female lead character in this. That was actually something I wanted to do for a while. I actually started writing this back in '08, so it's been in the works for quite some time. Um, and yeah, like I said, there's a lot of fun surprises there, but this is also I don't know if I've ever or I believe I have. It's a set series, so there's only going to be 12 issues, and the story will conclude after 12 issues.
And so to even talk about that before we talk about the other side who she's going up against, we might go in a little bit of spoilers. I'm going to try to keep it as spoiler free as possible. But even to do a 12 issue series, for an indie comic creator, that is a lot for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that it's a lot of Kickstarters, it's a lot of writing. It's also, artists and interest and maintaining interest. And so what is that like for you to take on that? Because most people, if they're doing an indie comic book, they might do 6 issues. To do, I know people who say, hey, I want to do 30, 40 issues on an indie book. And I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I love being, ambitious. I'm doing a lot of interviews this year. I get it completely. I'm expanding my business at the same time, an eBay business. But what is that like? Because it is complicated when you're doing 12 issues on an indie book. For DC or Marvel to do 12 issues, it's no big deal. It takes them a year. I don't know how many months it takes you and how frequently you put out a book. But obviously, if you put out, 4 books a year every 3 months, which is insane for a lot of people, and that's a lot of work, that means that this series is going to be over in 3 years. Versus if you do it twice a year, obviously it's a lot longer. If you do it 3 times a year, it's going to take you 4 years. And so what is that like, figuring out all that? And also, everybody's getting signed on the indies.
And you're right. 12 issues is for any indie comic creator, especially for myself, who's just the writer. So I wrote and created, but then I have to go out and find people to actually, bring it to life on the page, and that ain't free. So that means I'm coming out of pocket, for all these things. But when I sat down and started writing the story, I came to a point where I realized I could go right into go right into the action, and it would probably cut the series down into 6 books. But I realized that wasn't the character and that wasn't the story. I wasn't being honest to them. So I sat down and I planned it out and I wrote it out and I said it's got to be at least 12 to tell the actual story instead of just making it, you know, just an action movie on
Yeah,
comic book.
and even to talk off of that, because there is a balance between giving people, the mashed potatoes, the asparagus, and the carrots, and then giving them the steak, where the action is the steak. And look, we all know, Fast 9 is coming out.
Yeah.
We all know there's 10 minutes of action that we want to see in that movie. That's all we really want to see. But those 10 minutes of action have to be surrounded by another hour and 20 minutes of something that actually makes that action worthwhile. It's that great scene, I think it's in Fast 6, when Dom jumps over like the guardrail in slow motion and saves Levy or Lefty or whatever her name is off the top of my head. And like in slow motion, everybody was dying for that scene, but that scene wouldn't have made any sense if we didn't have the build up to that. And that's what I feel in this and in your book in particular, is that you need some of that background and some of those side dishes so that you understand why a mother would go, ape shit crazy and track down her kid's killer and go to no length of the earth to get the job done, and understand who ordered essentially the hit. And because we could just go into right into the shootout and not have any of that and just have clearly kid gets killed, your kid gets killed, and you go ape shit killing your kid's killer. That makes sense. But with that, all the mashed potatoes and carrots and asparagus attached to it, it actually means something. And so I think it's super important in a lot of ways that you're doing that.
Yeah, because the story, that story feels like it's been told a lot too. Main character has, ex family member killed, goes on revenge in the movie, in the story, and I didn't want that. I wanted to make this unique and different. And I tell people it's a slow burn. Like I said, there's a lot of parts where you're just learning about the people, and there are, quote unquote villains, but they're not, villains in the sense of, you don't want to hate them because everybody's got their flaws. Everybody is good and bad in some sense. So we're trying to build a world where you can see people just for maybe being too altruistic. So yeah, that's kind of what we're hoping to do with this story is build a world where people appreciate all the characters for all their flaws, and they don't use those labels heroes and villains because in the end, I mean, everybody's probably just bad in this book for good or bad reasons.
Yeah, and I mean, this soldier Miranda, she's not an angel by any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah.
and I got a feeling we're gonna learn about a lot of her, screwed up past, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, so as we dive more into it, definitely, again, without giving away too much, the character, I mean, nobody wants an angel for a character. Everybody has to be flawed, or else what's the point? So, but I think people will be generally happy with how this story is going to go. If you like a character-driven story, if you like just a really dark, moody story, I think you're really going to like what we're putting together.
And then obviously I want to talk about the flip side of who she's opposing. I said I'm gonna be as spoiler free as possible. Obviously she is dealing with a guy named Arturo,
Mm.
who is a criminal kingpin, might be not the highest guy up on the rung, and obviously he has his reasons why he did what he did, and he may or may not have a drug problem, or he might have to pay some debts, or he might have to be working for somebody, or he might be sort of a lieutenant in the crime, ladder of what's going on. Obviously, there's Gonzo, which is Art's brother, and he doesn't necessarily like what his brother's doing in his business and his criminal enterprise. And then there's obviously Max, which is Art's kid, and he has a big ego, and that also might play into why everything happened. And I'm under the impression that Max is significantly older than Miranda's kid was going to be, and that there is a significant age difference. So it's not a child scuffle. This is a much more adult issue that probably is taking place. I think it's a safe assumption, and so obviously there's a lot of moving parts here
Yeah.
with who she's dealing with, what's going on, why they're doing it, and who's doing what exactly, and all sorts of stuff. So what is that like? Because you put a lot of moving parts on her side, but then her opposition side, or at least her first opposition side, also has massive moving parts.
Yeah, so we wanted like a nice branching storyline. So when people read the book, it's not just the main character just going through the paces. So we wanted to give everybody a nice chunk of story. So we came back to a lot of story elements and a lot of threads we wanted to put in, especially for Art and his family. Um, One of the scenarios we had, when I say we, I'm talking about some of the people who would help me along the way. One of the concepts we had was if somebody put a gun to your head and forced you to kill somebody, are you the guilty one or the person who put the gun to your head? And that's kind of how we wanted to create the bad guy in the sense of if you do wicked things but you're being forced to, are you actually still, at fault? Um, we wanted to at least present situations where people might have to question that. And into your first point, yeah, Miranda's son was a lot younger. I think he's about 4 or 5 at the point in the beginning, and unfortunately, he doesn't make it past the first book. So
And even to go further into this, because obviously, I throw the word baggage around with your book, meaning that as Miranda is now dealing with a family, it's not that there was just a lone hitman. Obviously, when you're now going after somebody's family because they went after yours, there's baggage that gets attached to it, and that there are consequences for what you're doing. And that's where I feel like this is going in a lot of ways, is that, now Arturo's brother is involved and his kids involved. And I'm going to just say this openly, since there was a hit put on Miranda's family and Arturo, and I'm not exactly sure how he's fully involved, and I'm sure we're going to find out. Obviously, his family's involved, which means that it's open season. And so it becomes very, very interesting where it's like an eye for an eye type of situation. And so that is super interesting because obviously, even going further, you mentioned something that if somebody's holding a gun to your head and then you are forced to kill somebody, are you the bad one? Well, if you attack somebody's family and then they kill your family, is it fair that you did that in your revenge is also, I feel like, a theme. And there's a lot of that discussion, and it's all about who is innocent in what and who is guilty in what, and how do you cipher all that out. And it's super interesting, and that's what this book, in a lot of ways, is exploring also.
Exactly, and that was one of the probably the overall theme, and you touched on it perfectly. So, and yeah, in book two, you get to meet a little bit of Art and Max in the first book, but it's very brief. And then in the second book, all of a sudden you're starting to get exposed to their world just a bit, to where you're getting to know them, and you're getting a little bit of maybe what's happening, but not enough to maybe piece it together just yet. So thankfully, we got a great story plan. So moving forward, just a little bit each time, and then as the reader picks it up, I think they'll be quite happy with how it turns out.
And then obviously, I mean, issue one sets the stage, it sets the story. Issue two further dives into this, and things are going down in issue two. Issue two picks up sort of right after the shootout.
Exactly.
In many ways, Miranda's figuring out what the hell just happened and starting to go after the individual. So where is this series going? Because obviously, we threw out a bunch of stuff that's out there. I think people already got their wheels spinning a little bit, but where are we going fully with this story? Because there's a lot of stuff going on in a lot of ways. I can't emphasize it enough, because it's like, and I'm trying not to ruin anything, because I know that it's only going to take like 3 or 4 steps over for us to ruin everything.
And yeah, where's it going? Like I said, so for the next issue three, that's currently in the works, um, you're gonna things get kind of dark for Miranda. Obviously, she's not just waking up and going, all right, time to kill somebody. Her, she has to. That wouldn't necessarily be your natural inclination. So moving forward, like I said, there's a lot of dark stuff, and then a lot of stuff that just maybe she could move on, maybe she can't. So we have some of those moments coming up, and then eventually some of the pieces start to fall together bit by bit, and then she'll start to put it all together. So that's what you can expect in at least the next 2 issues.
And then obviously, I'm not going to push too hard on this because, as I stated, I'm trying to be as spoiler free. But basically, revenge is the word of the day with this book. And revenge is a dish best served cold. It's a very slow dish to serve on your enemies, and that's kind of where I think this is going. But I do want to talk about the rewards, because you got a bunch of stuff with these rewards. And obviously, you have a few digital things out there. I think you have a digital issue 2. I think you have a digital catch up. I think that those are sort of the 2 digital things. Do you have a digital plus edition? Because I know that's a big thing going on in Kickstarter right now.
For the digitals right now, I know we have just digital 1 and 2, and then for the physicals, we just got a lot of variant covers.
Oh, we're going to talk about the physical. Yeah. I got pictures. I got everything. We're going to talk about it. I don't know if we're going to do it in order, because I don't know exactly which is what, but I'm sure you know better than I do. So obviously, I believe this is cover A right here.
Yes.
And so obviously, sort of gives away what's going on, where she's obviously sort of dealing with Arturo and might be in a difficult scenario, what's going on, but this is sort of cover A, and so it says, hey, this is what this book is somewhat about. So what is the story behind this cover?
So this one's by Wilton Santos. He currently is working on a few Star Wars books for Marvel. And I mostly just gave him kind of, freedom, said, you know what, this is what the story is, this is what this issue is, and I let him create it, and I loved it. So, and he's actually doing all the covers for the main covers for the book. He's actually gotten through the first 4 already. So I enjoyed it. So
And so obviously cover aids are very important in many ways. And the reason why is that it's sort of the standard cover for mainstream comics and sort of says, hey, this is what this book is about. And it's kind of the book you put out on the shelf that gives an inclination of what this book is going to be about. So that's why, and that's what I get out of this cover in many ways.
yeah, it tells a story without having to. I mean, you could see that and kind of almost get an idea of, this is the, this person's in trouble. They're with the gun up behind them. You get that it's an action type of story. So I thought it just said a lot without having to say anything.
And then now we're going to do every other cover out of order because I have no idea which covers belong where. But I'm going to show pictures, and there might be some virgins in here, and there's some standard covers. So I'm sure you're going to correct me on which is which. We are very unprofessional here. It is what we do. I'm letting everybody know. But this cover right here is not the Virgin. I think it's variant cover C. And obviously, this is cool in a lot of ways. And obviously, we get a blood spattered. I'm assuming it's Miranda type person on this. And what's the Zerby on this? Because this is a really cool cover. And obviously, Nathan Sardes, I'm probably getting his name wrong to this cover. So this is one of those things that's cool.
I've actually never spoken to him, only chatted with him. I've always just pronounced it Surdy or Surdsy, something to that effect. So I couldn't correct you in a way. But yeah, he's currently he's doing covers for DC, and I believe he's doing some for Marvel. And with all my covers, I just tell the artists, I say, you know what, you take you take what you think and interpret it. And then he put it in his style. A lot of his stuff is kind of has that same look, and I dug it, and I said, cool. So but yeah, I'd like to
And
have my
then,
artists have the freedom to create what in their style what they think looks best.
and then this is the Virgin of that, which is really cool too. And I think the Virgin is super limited in a lot of ways. I think, what is there, only like 50 of them? Or
I no, I think we limited. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I'd have to look. I can't remember now, but I think we limited only one cover, and that was the one nude variant we had as an option. I think that's the limited one.
And but obviously Virgin covers are very big as well at this moment.
Yeah.
And so what is that like? Because obviously we're going through a bunch of other covers in a second here, but even finding these artists, because obviously I have this problem as an interviewer of finding people, and I go through a variety of different places. And how do you find an artist? Because that's a big thing, and you have a lot of covers. And I mean, you never spoke to him, you never met him at a convention. And so how'd you go even finding him? Say, hey, I got this project. Are you interested in doing it? Like, how do you just, is it Facebook groups, ArtStation, DeviantArt? Like, I'm super curious.
It's pretty much those, just going through, seeing people's posted art. Sorry if you're hearing my dog. And then just casting a wide net, saying, hey, I love your art. Do you want, are you free to take some work? And then go from there. So I'd say I hit about 50% about the people I asked, or to get work from them. But yeah, if I like somebody's art, I'll reach out to them and see if they're willing to do some work.
And then obviously one of the other things that I really like about this campaign as well, beyond just because I never heard of certain artists that you've done, and I know a few artists briefly, and I've just seen some of their stuff around, but you also have a lot of different styles as well. And this is another one of those, where this is very different from cover C, and I think this is cover E. It looks like it's cover E. It might be cover F. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, and that was actually the idea. Was I wanted to have something for everybody. And
Because this is more new school in a lot of ways. This is more, cartoony. It's more anime-ish. It's definitely, more of that vibe. It's more of, like sort of, I guess, saturated and popping a little bit. And it seems almost more lighthearted. Where if you put this in on a different book, I wouldn't think anything of it. Like you put this like on a Scotty Young book or something like that, like it could sort of fit in.
yeah, and I thought sometimes if we're deviating too far from it, but I really liked it. Jose Carlos Sanchez is the artist on that one, and he's done a lot of stuff for me. And I really, yeah, like I said, it's kind of got that anime feel to it, or that somewhat of a cartoonish feel almost. And his art, you can do, serious or not. I just love the way that looks. So, and I thought, you know what? I think there's going to be people who would like just something different. Because yeah, if I could get a Scotty Young cover, that would be awesome. But he's probably out of my price range, and or he has no time for somebody he's never heard of.
And then there's obviously I think this is the Virgin variant as well is as well as out there. I'm not too sure if I might have messed up the images on that, but obviously there's a Virgin of it as well, I believe.
Yeah, we tried to give that for every cover, like an option, because I know some people love having just nothing on it so they can enjoy the artwork of it. And for some people, it doesn't matter. So I wanted to try to give as many options as available for everybody.
This is the Virgin,
Yeah.
and then this is the trade paper, I guess, back version, for
Correct.
lack of a better word. And so obviously that's cool, and I like that, and those are just two of the covers, and then obviously there's this cover as well, which is another cover, and obviously we got a lot of fun. Sort of, she's bloodied up, she's sort of changing out. We get that playfulness, but it's not a very playful cover, I will add. It's sort of very cool though, where like she's pulling down, her clothes and sort of cleaning up, and I like how her gun is sort of in the bathroom with her.
Yeah, and we actually, like I said, the people that I've worked with, I had discussions about, because the book itself it's very serious, and there's really nothing sexualized in it. There is nudity in the book, but it's nothing that nothing about the character being sexualized, at least in my opinion. But with Kickstarter, obviously, the more you have is the better chance to reach more people for reward tiers and stuff. So we
And
decided to
that's
throw a few in there.
Virgin too.
Yeah, so it like I said, I'm on the fence a little bit about them, but I know people like them. This cover got a lot of people interest in it, so yeah. And like I said, it came out great. So and the color on it, I thought looked amazing. So
And to even talk about that, because obviously I come from the Zenescope world. I buy and sell very playful, provocative covers on eBay.
yeah,
I don't deal with nudity covers because selling a nude book on eBay has its own rules, and I choose not to play with those rules
yeah,
because it is more of a headache than it is worth my time. But I do like their playful covers. I like what is known as good girl art. And a lot of stuff and a lot of covers, there's good girl art on the cover, but the book isn't good girl art. And it's just a selling point, and it's a big discussion that's going on right now in comics. And I'm sure you're in indie comic groups, and I've seen this from people who do 30,000 on a Kickstarter and people who do $2,000 on a Kickstarter, and everybody has an equal say in this. And obviously, there is a big debate: do you need new covers to be successful in Kickstarter? And I would make the argument that you really don't in a lot of ways, and it's really up to what your book lends to, who your audience is, and where that's going. But it is a very interesting thing. Obviously, I like all sorts of covers. I like covers that are cool. And obviously you have a variety of covers, and even going off of that, what is that like to give so much choice? Because in my view, choice is key here with
yeah,
Kickstarter in particular.
yeah. And I mean, I looked at other Kickstarters and seeing what was being offered, and I wanted to be comparable to them. Like I said, obviously we decided that some tasteful nudes we would do. Like so there's one that is actually a nude cover. Um, but yeah, and like I said, personally I'm on the fence about it, but I know there's a large community of comic collectors who prefer them, and I have nothing against them. So
So this is to talk about the nude cover. This is another cover, and then there is a nude cover of this book
yeah,
out there. And so obviously this is the new cover. Don't worry, it's censored.
yeah.
And what was that like to be able to even just do a nude cover to give it? Because it is nice to give that choice to somebody. And obviously, to get more of what people can see, obviously it's a cool cover with her having just regular clothes on, being sexy, and I think it's an awesome cover. And then obviously, the nudity adds an element to it as well. And I think it is important that you give sometimes your audience something and give them a little bit of a choice on, saying, hey, if you want a nude cover, I'm not giving it to you on A, B, or C, but on D, you could have clothes or unclothed, and well, those people who want it can then get it.
Yeah, and for us, it became a point of as long as it still seems like it could fit the world we're setting, so it's not overly gratuitous. And obviously the arts came out amazing. Both the artists who did those were clearly talented. So yeah, that's kind of where I settled on it at that point. I was like, well, it looks good. It doesn't seem like it's pandering to anything.
And do you also feel that it attracts a different buyer in? Because one of the things that I am, and I'm the first person to admit it, is that I back Kickstarter sometimes not for the story, but because of the Virgin cover or the variants, or if there's a particular artist that I like that worked on a Kickstarter. And maybe that's not the greatest thing to publicly say, but I know that there's a lot of us that do that. You know, I back plenty of Kickstarters because the art is phenomenal. I'm like, I've never seen this artist do anything like this, where this cover looks so sick that I want to get it graded and hang it up on my wall. Or I want a poster of this. I don't even want the book. I just want the art because it's a cool talking point. And there's sometimes like, I love some of these stories too, but I'm more interested in the art. And so like somebody did a homage cover to Trigun. And obviously I'm a big anime guy. And so obviously, you know, I'm like, man, that's a great cover. That's brilliant. You know, and I have to buy that for 30 bucks. I don't really care about your story per se, but I think the art is awesome on it. And so obviously I think nude covers do that. And I think everything, all the covers you put out there also do that in a lot of ways. And it's very much an attraction point.
Yeah, and to your point as the writer, I'm very aware that people sometimes only like stuff for the art, and that's always my biggest fear. But I also am a comic collector, and I have many books that I bought exclusively because I love the artist, and I've bought books just because I like the cover, and so I'm just as guilty as that as anyone else. So so yeah, that does play into it. I want to offer something. My hope is everybody buys it and reads it and enjoys the story. But if you just want to buy it to enjoy the art, well, then I mean it's great art, so you can do that just as well.
And then obviously speaking about great art, we have this cover too. And this is cover B. Finally we got the cover B. We finally got the cover B. And obviously I'm a Robotech and Power Rangers fan. I grew up watching Power Rangers. I came into Robotech a little bit later. I am right now eyeing a Robotech comic book that might be pricey on eBay. So if somebody's listening, you have that book, it might be mine relatively soon. But obviously this is very, very cool to have somebody who did Robotech, obviously worked on the Power Rangers, doing your cover B. And this is that action-packed, fun, you know, cover that I don't really know what's going on. If I bought this book and it was on a shelf, I'd be like, that's a really cool cover. Makes me want to read the book.
Yeah, and I was blown away when you did this one. Yeah, because he was currently, I believe, at the time when I worked with him, had just wrapped up Robotech and had moved on to Power Rangers or vice versa. And yeah, I still am a huge Robotech fan, so I was just anybody who has anything to do with it, even if it's just on the comic side of it, still is awesome. And then, like I said, his work is amazing. When he gave me that, I was blown away. And I actually have spoken with him again, so hopefully he'll be doing another variant on the next Kickstarter for us.
And so this book just makes me want to read this book. It makes me want to say, hey, I want to read this thing because if the book looks anything like this, it's going to be a phenomenal book. And because this cover sort of is a really good representation of that.
It really is.
And then obviously I want to talk about this. And this is obviously the Virgin variant. And this is a cool one too. And it's just sort of that like portrait-esque thing. And it's just a cool cover. And it's very stark. And, it's one of those things. And obviously Aaron worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so obviously a lot of cool stuff's going on with this. And a lot of people from the mainstream industry are coming into indies and they're working on your books. And so what was this like, really having that? And also there is the regular cover of it as well. But I do want to show the Virgin more because I think the Virgin's beautiful.
Yeah, I was really excited about this one when I got him to come on. He actually did one for this one and another comic we have in the works that I'm just kind of sitting on waiting for that Kickstarter because they're both great. And it couldn't have come out any better. And he's got a large fan base, and I've had them reaching out to me saying they have to have it because they have to have all his covers. So.
And again, it goes back to my entire thing where obviously that's a big bring in for you because obviously as this is going on, you say, hey, I'm a fan of this person's work and I need to have it. And then they're backing the Kickstarter and they're probably not just backing for the regular version, they're also backing for the Virgin cover as well. Because people who like me, and obviously I'm caught in the middle because I'm also a comic book investor and everything that I buy for the most part, 90% of it at some point will go on sale. And so I bet on artists and a lot of stuff, and a lot of other people do that as well. And so obviously a lot of people might be saying, hey, I really like this guy's work, and I think it's going to go up in value as well. And it must be very cool for you that people are saying, hey, I don't really know necessarily this story. This seems really cool, but I'm really interested in his art. And then you make the pledge and the backer on that project because of an artist has a big fan base, and they're helping to get your Kickstarter across the line in many
Yeah,
ways.
and that was kind of that's always the hope too when you try to get artists that are on projects that people know, because as great as an art is, if people don't know the name, sometimes they just kind of skim it and move on. So I try to make sure I get artists that have worked on major titles, so that way when people stop, they're like, oh, okay, so I know this guy who's worked on. I think the last one Aaron did was Ronin, which is part of the Teenage Ninja Turtles. And just on a side note for that one, I spoke with him about it. So if anybody does get that cover, they can send it to him, and he will do the signature slash like put the drawing, a little drawing on it. For he does that for his fans for a fee. So.
And then even to go further off of this, because one of the big trends that I'm noticing, and obviously I'm coming at this as a podcaster, is that a lot of top industry professionals are now doing a lot of indie books and are coming into indie. And there's a lot of reasons why. I think that indie books are really hot. I also think that, some of these top people, sometimes they are in between gigs, and that, maybe, IDW or DC or Marvel doesn't have something for them. And then they're like, hey, I'll do a few indie covers here, a few indie covers there. Some of these people are really fast. I don't know if you know who Elias Chazus is.
I know the name, but
The guy could do a cover in a day.
Yeah.
That's really fast.
That is.
I mean, and so, if he wants to turn out a lot of covers, he can. And so other people are slower cover artists, and that happens. And so obviously I don't know how fast Aaron is per se. I don't want to put him in a bad spot, but he might be able to turn out, 2 covers a week. And so if he has, certain covers, and then all of a sudden he did 9 covers in a month, or he did 6 covers in a month, he might have a spot for an indie book. And so why do you think that, though, a lot of big names are now coming into Kickstarter? Because I'm curious, because obviously you booked some big names, and you've booked people from all over. I mean, from Titan Comics all the way to Boom, all the way to Marvel, DC, and IDW, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, and DC too. So you've run the gauntlet in many ways.
I've been fortunate. I would attribute it to a few things. One, a couple of the artists I actually got to right before they started getting published in the bigger works. So I'm sure I got a better rate than they're probably going with now.
And you probably gave them early work, and you probably might have even made them be able to pay their mortgage.
I'd like to hope so.
And I could tell you that it's kind of, as an aside note, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but I've gotten people before they became big. And while I wasn't paying anybody for an interview, I was giving them a lot of free publicity when nobody was giving them, and then they come back on. Because when they're bigger, because they're like, oh, I get it. You actually were my first interview. You were somebody who was actually presenting my work to like 400 people before I got my big break. And I think a lot of people are very appreciative of that. And I think that that's also part of it.
And I could see that as well, because, the indie comic scene especially is really good for just helping each other out. I mean, just with this Kickstarter, other guys who are running Kickstarters have just been super gracious, reaching out, willing to share posts, willing to give advice to help get the word out better. It's crazy how much the indie comic scene is people willing to help each other, as opposed to I would assume when it comes to the bigger guys, they're going to be a little more cutthroat with each other because it's all about the bottom dollar. But to your point about artists, I think for them, if I had just from my own limited experience with them, it seems like the indie scene is just really laid back. So for an artist who may be working for like DC or Image or whoever, they can, they have a hard deadline, but usually with indie books, you don't have as hard of a deadline. Like I don't really have hard deadlines because I don't have a publishing date I have to hit. So they have a little bit more freedom working with me, and probably the same with other indie creators. We're just happy to have, great artists on the thing, and we'll give them
and also you give a lot of creative freedom.
Exactly.
And
great exchanges.
And also you're not beholden necessarily to, with Image or Marvel or DC, they have to make their money back. So certain covers have to hit. And if something doesn't hit, and it's sort of shitty, it's going to affect. Now, that doesn't mean that, cover B might not be cover A, but cover A needs to meet a certain number. Cover A needs if there's 15,000, 13,000 that need to sell. If, 14,000 of them sell, that's great. But if 13,500 sell, that's good too. But if only 12,000 of them sell, that's a problem with Marvel on a book. Versus if you go and do something and 300 of that cover sells for Aaron, that's not an issue for you the same way it would be if you were doing this through an actual publishing company and that you need to sell a certain amount to be profitable.
Yeah. And there's probably that freedom too of not having that kind of pressure of having that number, dangling above them of how much did they actually, how much, that issue push. Like I said, 'cause, yeah, the numbers are going to be a lot lower for an indie, but the fan base is, is still just as strong. If the numbers aren't as big, but they're still there. And like I said, they appreciate the art, they appreciate the effort just as much.
And then you've also done something very cool as well. That's also now a big trend, and obviously that interests a lot of cosplayers. And you actually have 2 cosplay covers. And
Yeah,
so, what's the story behind this? Because this is an indie book, and I say this very nicely, but it's very cool when indie books get cosplayers doing things for them. It's because it's not. I wouldn't imagine, and I speak to a lot of cosplayers that I don't know how many cosplayers know of your book per se, if that makes any sense.
yeah, and I guess the fortunate thing about mine, it's a very easy cosplay, clearly. So if somebody wanted to, it would be very minimal effort, costume wise. You don't have to make a whole elaborate spiel. Um, and they were kind of popular, and I thought they were fun. And I have a friend, Kaylee, who was the cosplay model. I know she's talked about doing cosplay and modeling. Um, so we just kind of just got something together. We got a photographer, and we went around town, and she's also uh, she does a lot of shooting and hunting, so she's very familiar with weapons and weapons training. So she was the perfect for that role. The only downside was the hair color was a little off, but aside from that,
And then obviously there's a second one with her too,
yeah,
which is cool too. And I like the fact that you have 2 cosplay variants, and that even this idea that somebody can choose from both of them. It's obviously a photo. So, and one of the things is that cosplays make things come to life, where it's cool to have this cover up there, and I really like showing this cover. Obviously, it's cool to have that, and that's awesome. But it's also cool to have an actual person say, okay, this is what this person would look like if they were real. If this comic took place and it was almost a movie or something like that, this is what it would look like. And I think it's very cool in that regard to do that. And also, cosplay covers are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Places like, Brian Polito's Lady Death does stuff. The Soulverse universe with Tyrone Jackson does it. And a variety of other cosplay players are now getting into indie comics and projecting that out. So obviously being part of that, you're giving somebody a cool position, and you're also giving another variant, another alternative for, hey, what do I want on my comic? And we've also seen this with IDW. They do a lot of photo covers.
yeah. I like I think it's IDW that's doing Red Sonja. They got a lot of those for the Red Sonja.
So Red Sonja is done by Dynamite. They
That's
do Dynamite. IDW does like the Star Trek photo covers. But Dynamite does Vampirella. They
yeah.
do Dijora Thorn. And then they also do Red Sonja, and they do a lot of them. They do, and then they do also, and then a bunch of people that I've known have been on Dynamite. Sapphire Nova's been on, and Vanta Black's been on my show, and they've both been on Dynamite covers, and it's awesome, and I
Yeah,
love it. And
that's kind of what
then,
I wanted was that Dynamite feel of just those fun covers where
and
everybody
then
looked like they had a good time doing it.
Yeah, and then Dynamite actually also does Betty Page, but Betty
Oh,
Page is classic, like black and white Betty Page pictures.
huh.
Fantastic from when she was freaking a bombshell. So anyhow, totally off topic right there, but I love it. Even Dynamite's big on that, and those covers are fun. They're awesome, and I buy a bunch of them because they're just fun to throw up on Instagram. And who doesn't want to look at like something looking like real? Like what would these characters look like if they were actually real?
Yeah, and we have a lot of left from that photo shoot as well. So depending on how well the Kickstarter goes, there may be some reward tiers or some stretch goals, or we can throw in some of the ones that didn't make the cut just for fun.
And then obviously, this is just something that I like about your Kickstarters. There's a lot of choice. There's a lot of different covers that people can pick up, and I think it is super important. As I stated, I think choice matters right now. I've been saying this for a while at this point, where the three big things that are going to dictate society for the next 10 years are on demand, which Kickstarter is somewhat of that, because it is somewhat, hey, I want this project, and you might have to wait 3 months, but you're sort of demanding it, and it's being funded. Big libraries of content, and then customization and choice. And so obviously I play in the big library space with the amount of podcasts that I do that I think are going to dictate things. But I think you're really playing in the customization and choice play with Kickstarter. And you're not the only one who's doing it at this point. A lot of people are doing 4, 5, 6 variants. You're doing a lot of variants. And so what is that like? Because I mentioned already before, but even to have that much, I guess, expenditure up front, but also giving choice, and then having that much, because when you eventually go to a con, you have all these covers out there. Somebody's passing by your booth, they have a real choice of what type of thing they want. And you could also sell them, and I'm the type of person that says, well, I really like cover A, or I like cover, D, and I like cover E. I don't really care about cover C, but that's okay because you got me interested because you have more choice now, and I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not Lady Death. I feel like they have like 100 different covers. It seems like on their Kickstarters, but uh,
Zenoscope's a better example. Zenoscope sometimes per book legitimately has about 8 different covers, and I like Zenoscope. But again, they have on a particular book with Zenoscope. I don't know about Lady Death. I know Zenoscope more. They have usually 4 main covers. Then they might have 3 other covers for that book, and then they might have a 4th book. So they might have 8 to 10 covers for a particular book, which is ludicrous.
yeah,
And that price point is anywhere from $4 to $100, possibly $200 if it's a metal.
wow,
So you could go from $4 with Zenoscope to $200 in that. It's a brilliant business. It's great. I love that company. I will not speak ill of that company, but it can make you very poor very quickly. And somewhat of your covers can do that too. But you're not going from $4 to $200 just like that.
yeah. We're trying to keep within reason. Obviously, I think the highest one we go is 50. I'd have to double check, obviously, but uh, we try to make those the most valuable in the sense that we're going to keep them limited. Um, and I mean, really, you're only going to have a chance to get it either at a Kickstarter or by finding me at a Comic Con. Which right now is they're just starting to pick back up. So, and then
And
again, if they're
that's the
limited
other
to Kick,
thing.
oh, sorry, I was just going to say some are limited to Kickstarter. So once the campaign's over, that's the only place we're ever going to put them out for. So those people know what they have is exclusive to it.
And that's the other thing that I like, in which that I like when people don't reprint books per se,
Yeah.
or only reprint some books and make things limited on Kickstarter. I think scarcity matters. I think it is very, very important when we're being scarce here with items. And I also think that, hey, picking something up at a Kickstarter or at a con is where it is. And then, and having limited books too, I also think is super important, because it does make me feel like, hey, I'm backing this book, because I'm sure you backed the Kickstarter, and I backed the Kickstarter for 60, and while the books were getting signed by the people involved in them, the 3 women who wrote the book, and it was being sent back and forth on a book plate, I wound up learning later on I could buy that book for 18 bucks on Etsy from the same guy, maybe not signed, but I could go get it signed myself in a lot of ways. So, I don't really appreciate when, things go south. And when, it's like that happens where I buy a book on Kickstarter, and then you're bringing it right into, you bring it into Diamond in a week after the Kickstarter's done. I think that that's just poor business.
Yeah, and the prices that we listed for the book are. I want people who back the Kickstarter to not feel like next week they could have got it for a cheaper price. It's what it is at this, and on top of that, they're also going to get stuff that's only on the Kickstarter. Little fun stuff we haven't had a chance to announce yet, but that we're putting in with the books. Um, like I said, yeah, but I definitely get that. I've had that happen too. I back a lot of Kickstarters the last few years myself, and a few of them I've later seen like, man, I could have got that for a lot cheaper deal. So
And even going further off of that, for me, it's, I don't mind spending money on a Kickstarter, but like I back Kickstarters for a regular issue for $15 and then $5 shipping. And I come from the world where a 350 print run with Zenescope, and I use them as an example, and you could call me biased, it's fine. I'll take the heat from everybody. But that's a variant and it's limited to 350. And I don't mind spending money for $10 for an indie book. But if you're not going to include any major extras or anything major fun when I'm taking a risk on your book, the art isn't spectacular per se. It's cover A. It's not bad art, but I was not thrilled about that Kickstarter. And so I am very selective on what I back, when I back it, how I back it. And I choose my backings, and this is why stretch goals and announcing things, I get that people want to surprise their viewers, but you have to get me beyond just the artwork. You have to put it at a certain price point, and you have to say, hey, I'm including a die cut sticker, I'm including metal cards, I'm including, a metal bookmark in there. It's like you have to tell me certain things. Otherwise, there's 50 Kickstarters out there, and while the art might bring me in, the stretch goals will keep me staying there. It's very important because I need to find value in what's being done.
yeah, and part of that is with me. I noticed, or I should say, all my books are quite longer than the average.
That helps. That helps.
The floppy. All my books are a minimum of 40 pages, so you're almost
PDFs help. PDFs help too.
Yep.
I can tell you that.
So, but we definitely have so we haven't announced any of the stretch goals just yet, because I have a few things I'm waiting to get lined up that I'd rather announce first that I think are more fun than the standard stuff. I love stickers and bookmarks, but I think there's some stuff that we have in the works.
Coasters. I like coasters. I like the drinks, so I like coasters.
I've never actually seen coasters on a Kickstarter. That's it.
Oh, Sister Mercy. Brilliant. Coasters was phenomenal. It was. They weren't expensive. Don't get me wrong, but they were fun, and they are fun. You have your friends over, and you throw out some comic coasters. Oh, it's the best time you'll ever have.
Oh, that's a good idea, actually. Yeah, because bookmarks and stickers, we have those too. And those are fun, definitely want something fun.
Stickers are boring. I don't really care about stickers. Magnets are useful. I enjoy magnets because I have a refrigerator. I actually can use a magnet. And then I can actually see the magnet on my refrigerator. It's great. I love metal cards. Metal cards make me happy. Anybody who does a metal card in their Kickstarter, I will back your project if it's a stretch goal. Like, no kidding. No kidding. Do metal cards and I will back your Kickstarter, and I will champion your Kickstarter until no amount of end. Because I love metal cards. Like coasters, they're fun because they're actually practical and they're talking points when I have my friends over and we're playing board games with each other.
Yeah, and that I said I've never seen. I saw somebody recently who had a record, like an old school vinyl record you could get with.
That's cool. I appreciate that. I don't have a record player, but that's cool. I would put it up on my wall. It'd be a fun talking point.
I'm an old hipster. I still got records up the wazoo, so I still listen to them.
And so, but to get back on track, you also have posters that I think deal with the cover. You could be likeness in the book. There's also an ability, and I'm not too sure if it's gone yet, but an alternative cover. I'm not too sure what that exactly means.
So for the biggest tier, it actually was back, and then unfortunately they dropped. It was something that I thought was unique. Pretty much, you have the option to create your own cover. Like, you tell us what you want, and then our artist will create that cover, and then we will print 10 of those covers just for you. So you will have the 10 exclusive covers to do with as you want of the cover you designed for that book.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so if you ever wanted to get your talent
in other words, it's essentially a commission that gets turned into a cover, and then it's 10 of 10 that you own.
That is correct. Plus, you get everything else in the Kickstarter. I mean, you get everything in the kitchen sink at that point.
And so I already know what to do with that, and I already know the perfect thing to do with that. So I know who that should go to. Also, if somebody was very, very smart and they wanted to be entrepreneurial, it's his comic shop, guys. I'm telling you, it's the way to go. But obviously there's a bunch of rewards. You got some stretch goals coming too, and you don't want to announce it yet. So you can continue to be selfish. It's all right.
Well, I just there's one I'm really excited about, and I want to make sure that it's confirmed before I make the announcement.
I mean, you're probably going to do bookmarks usually, right? I mean, most likely,
bookmarks,
right?
stickers, we already got those ready to go. I'm not going to make a big deal of this because I feel like those pretty much come standard with every Kickstarter.
And then I mean, trading cards is a possibility because that's always something that's easy to do as well, and that's nothing new. Because I think what you have in your head is more out of the box. Is a fair assessment, you know.
And there are trading cards; those are added. I don't remember if we put a picture in just yet, but we had them homage the '90s Marvel cards. So they got the borders, they got the same type. I mean, so they look like our our characters in the '90s Marvel trading cards.
And so I mean, we're not really spoiling anything. Those things have been done. A lot of people do it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're cool. They don't excite me per se. Again, I have no use for stickers. I have uses for metal cards and magnets. So I love my magnets. My magnets upset people when they come into my apartment and it's beautiful / my house / my parents' house. So it's really mine. They just happen to live here. They'll tell you otherwise, but they're wrong. But I digress on there, and I do want to talk about Kickstarter and back out of yours for a second. Obviously, Kickstarter has been a very interesting place for the last 18 months. I think it is a safe assumption. And obviously, a lot of big names have come into Kickstarter. A lot of big names have left Kickstarter, and people have been kickstarting like crazy. I am already maxed out by 6+ my entire backing this year, and we are in June. And there's been phenomenal projects that have come onto Kickstarter in the last 18 months as well. So where do you feel Kickstarter is going? Because it's a very interesting place on who's on there, and even just I feel like the quality of projects has risen tremendously in the last year or so.
Yeah, because my first book I kickstarted, and that was at least 4 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer. And just the whole scene around it is so different now. And like you're saying, yeah, like now you have big name people coming and putting their projects on there.
You have big companies. You have Keanu Reeves, Scott Snyder, Todd McFarlane, AEW. Who would have thought a wrestling company with the put butts in seats, and AEW was really big behind that book, would be on Kickstarter? I mean, if you told me 2 years ago that AEW would be where it would be at, and that they would be very influential on Kickstarter, I would tell you, what are you smoking, right? I think you would make the same statement. And so obviously that's gone down, and then you have other people like Brian Pulido who does very well, and then you have people like Tom Hutchinson who does extremely well, and then you have projects like Dawn Mateague and JP Roth with Divinica that has done very well, and a variety of other people are now entering, and then Boom Studios. Boom Studios, obviously Going Beyond Berserk with the Power Rangers, has done very well. So obviously indie comics has been a very cool thing, but it's also been very complicated because all those people came in, not Dawn Mateague and JP Roth, and a few others were sort of on the peripherals, and not Tom, not Brian Pulido, but Scott and Keanu Reeves came in, and there were more projects being funded when they were involved for about the month leading up to it and about 2 or 3 months after. And now there's less projects on Kickstarter, and there's actually less success rate.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense from even from just a corporate standpoint, because you go to your audience and you find out exactly what they want, as opposed to printing, say, 1 million of something and hoping you sell those. You go and find your audience and know, well, we only need X amount to satisfy our core audience, and so we don't have that extra overhead. And that you find your audience right there, and even for a little bit smaller, not just independent, but it's like Todd McFarlane. It frees him from any kind of need of any kind of comic or corporate entity. Not that he really needs that, but I get the appeal of it. But yeah, it can get a little smothering as like the smaller guy can be getting pushed out just a little bit.
And then obviously you were speaking before that the indie community though has been very helpful. And look, I mean, I would say overall, it's about 90-10 So I've had 90% of the time a good experience, and 10% of the time. And 3 weeks ago, apparently everybody was at war with each other in the indie comic world. And I don't know about what, and I was the victim of getting attacked randomly because of somebody I interviewed. And so obviously, but I do think mostly the indie comic world, and I am a part of it as an interviewer because I interview a lot of indie creators, is very helpful. And I also feel like that has been a change in heart as well with Kickstarter and a lot of other things. So what has that been like? Because I would say 5 years ago, there was no indie community as it is right now. I think this is the best indie community that's been out there due to Facebook groups, and just a lot of people I feel are just generally not trying to compete with each other the same way that they were maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I can't speak to any kind of drama. I wasn't aware of any anyway.
I wasn't either until I got attacked. I was perfectly happy, doing my thing, interviewing, and then I get attacked, and I'm like, well, what's going on? And then I speak to a bunch of people, and they're like, yeah, something's going down. And apparently, everybody from every different angle was like, it was bad. Like a month ago. It was 3 weeks, to a month ago. I don't even know what happens because I'm not an indie comic creator, and I get attacked, and I'm like, I'm just the interviewer. Don't shoot the messenger.
All my experiences has been great. So I mean, I do stay out of. I don't, when it comes to like social media, I don't get into the. I know there's a lot going on in the world of comics right now. It's kind of divisive, not just indie, but I mean like stuff with the mainstream. I try to stay out of that. Just I'm not the kind of person who likes to be opinionated in public.
I don't like it either. Yeah. That's why I don't know why I got attacked. I'm still confused. I'm still upset. I'm very upset.
I mean that sucks, man. I like I said, but thankfully for me, everybody I've dealt with has been super awesome. And
I mean, I had to go to therapy. It was horrific.
Wow. That's extreme. That must have been. I don't know what those people were mad at.
I was legitimately like, after getting attacked for like an hour, I was visibly upset. Like I like to think I'm a tough guy, and I like to think and look, I've been in enough fights, both physically, and I've been in Twitter fights and Twitter spouts and Facebook fights, and there's been explosions, and I wasn't visibly upset. The person attacked me on Facebook privately, and I was visibly upset. Huh. I'm like traumatized still. It's horrific.
Well, that's awful, just in general.
I don't know why I was attacked. I don't know why, and I'm still confused. But all I know is I'm going to post cat videos in his group as revenge.
But yeah, for me, thankfully, it's been smooth. I mean, knock on wood, obviously, but everybody I've engaged has been really nice, really supportive.
That's how I feel 90% of the time. And even when people say, hey, I'm not interested, I find that people are very nice about it. It's like, yeah, cool show. I'm just not interested. It's not my thing. And like, yeah, but I really feel that the community has evolved in a lot of ways as well, where people are actually genuinely nice to one another in this community. And sort of that leads me into COVID. Because I think COVID has sort of forced that in a certain way, because COVID hit, shut down every con, and one of the only venues that was open was Kickstarter in a lot of ways. And so what was that like for you? And obviously, it also, I felt that bonded a lot of indie comic creators together. And even going forward, obviously, as you stated, cons are opening up back now. Where do you think they're going? Because obviously, we're going to get back to them, but what does that path look like in your view as an indie comic creator? Because for me, as a panelist, it looks very different.
Yeah, I mean, I've just started to get the invites again about coming back to the local cons where I'm at. I'm in Colorado, and for myself, I'm still a little bit tentative about large groups. You spend a whole year being afraid of it, so I think a lot of people are going to be like that initially. So I expect the first few cons. I mean, I could be wrong too. People could just be itching to get out, but I expect the first few major cons around here to have like a smaller audience than they typically would, just because people want to put the feelers out. So, and
Do you also feel that there is a change though? Because I'm a big adapter to technology, and obviously last year I adapted from doing pre-recorded to doing live, and I did a lot of content, and the way I see it is, while cons are going to come back, I don't know as far as content and media push that the same demand is going to be there, because I think, I could get whatever I want now off the internet. In fact, I've gotten more stuff off the internet at a much easier and lower price point than I used to before. And as a eBay seller and a reseller and buying merch, it's never been easier. I mean, COVID has benefited me, where legitimately a business that I didn't even know existed was built in COVID for myself. And maybe not a business, but a side hustle that now is slowly transforming into a business. And even something like this, I don't think that if COVID happened, this would have occurred. And I don't mean you and me, I mean the 150 plus interviews that I've done in the last 18 months. So, and I don't think it's going away, even with cons coming back. And I think that creators are actually going to be relying on more of this stuff, because this is just as powerful as you sitting at a booth for 3 days on a con, even though you're not selling a comic book, because people now, 200 to 300 or 400 people are going to be able to see your name and actually say, this is Jim Tanner, and actually have an idea of what your book is about. And that might be more powerful than you selling 50 comics of your book at a con over 3 days.
Yeah, and definitely for people like me, it's going to make this is better. I probably get more reaction through something like this than at a con, because at a con I'm a one guy in a sea of other people that nobody knows, and then they're there for the Frank Millers or the big names, and you're just trying to grab their attention on the way to one of them. So yeah, I could, and I've seen how cons themselves have changed. All the people that would show up and do the autograph sessions and all that are just doing everything kind of virtually now, and I'm sure they probably prefer that in the sense, because now they don't have to sit there, for 8 hours a day, having to greet everybody, getting potentially sick. Not even COVID, just all the germs in general. But yeah,
or even seeing people. I don't know about you, but I don't love a bunch of people. I like maybe 10 people in my life. And I'm very honest about it. I enjoy interviewing people, but if I have the ability to, do a panel live right here in front of 300 people on the internet, I would do that every single time. It's so much easier for me. And so that's how I view it. And so I think this is going to be just so much more influential. And I don't think these types of things are leaving. And I think this is sort of the new thing for comic creators. In addition to being at a con, I think this has to be now a major factor, is doing an interview almost every week if you're a comic creator.
Yeah.
Minimum.
And yeah, I mean, I'm just starting to kind of, with this Kickstarter, realize how much I need to do more this kind of presence, podcasts, webcasts, things like that. Yeah, so I'm learning as I go. Just
it's a learning curve, and again, I've never run a Kickstarter. At some point, I probably will. I am just way over my head in everything that I'm doing, but this isn't about me; it's about you.
I'm in the same boat.
I'm not. Well, I'm sure I'm going to be in the same boat you're in when I decide to run a Kickstarter, possibly in the next year, if I get to it at all. But as soon as I'm ready to do it, I'm sure I'm going to be in the same boat, because I'm sure I'm going to have that learning curve, and I'm sure it's going to be a fun time, and all the stresses of a down day are going to all hit me. And if you make friends with me on Facebook, you're going to see like post after post after post. It's like, I only got $300 today. It's like yesterday I got $305. It's terrible. The world's gonna end.
It's definitely a roller coaster.
Oh, and it's gonna be like, you're gonna see me for like the entire 30 months of my Kickstarter. Every like 5 minutes there's gonna be a Facebook post. I got $1. I got $3. I got $4. It's gonna be like a ding alert going crazy, like an Apple notification. Oh, it's gonna be great. So anyway, though, having done what I'm going to explain to everybody in the next year what's going to happen in my world. So if you're a Facebook friend of mine, you might, when I'm running my Kickstarter, might want to put me on mute for 30 days. I would take it personal. I understand completely. But anyhow, I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote yourself. Obviously, where can people find you on the internet? Where can people find the Kickstarter? No, the link's up above, as I mentioned, up top. As well as, do you have a website? Do you have a Facebook page? Do you have a Twitter account, Instagram, all that stuff? So obviously I want people to back the project. As I stated, Kickstarter's up above, but again, tell people where they can find you and all
Yeah.
your stuff that you're doing.
So definitely check out Kickstarter, Dig Two Graves. That's live now for Instagram. It's Sketchy Nuke. Also on Facebook, you can look up SN Comics or just myself, Jim Tanner, on Facebook. Like I said, I'm pretty open. I always tell people who back or just look at the campaign, hey, tell me what you like, what you don't like. I'm always willing to take suggestions. If there's types of rewards you want to see, hey, you're my audience. I'm trying to appease you, so I'm always open. So please feel free to reach out. We don't have a website just yet, but it is in the works.
Yeah, and on that note, and I've been saying this over and over again, and you're going to keep hearing me say it, you have to support indie. What that means is that you have to support indie content creators. I am an indie content creator. You obviously are an indie content creator. I have my links up above. You have the Kickstarter, and you got to back those links. It is super important. It is the best way how to support people is by clicking and backing those links. And it does make a difference. Now, I get it. COVID has wrecked people. I've been saying this, do not go into debt for me. Do not go into debt for Jim. If you are in a financial hardship and times are tough, and I get it, believe me, I understand. I moved back to my parents' house during COVID to save money. So I am with everybody on understanding what's going on. And so you're not alone. You're not alone. I'm very honest about it. Please do not go into debt for this Kickstarter. Do not go into debt for me. But if that's the case, please follow on social media. Obviously, you mentioned a bunch of your social media. If you like this podcast, please share it, like it, move it around, share the Kickstarter. That makes a big difference too. That is super, super important because if you have a bunch of comic friends and they didn't see this Kickstarter, they might say, man, I love this thing, and it's actually happened. One of my guests yesterday actually backed somebody's Kickstarter live because they're like, oh, I didn't see this. This looks really cool. Let me back it. When I was doing an interview with another creator. So this does happen. It does make a difference. And that's just me doing an interview without me even sharing. They just saw it. Imagine if you share somebody's Kickstarter, you never know who's looking at it, whether you share it on Twitter, Facebook, or anywhere else. Same thing with this podcast. It makes a difference. So please share content around if you cannot afford to back it. And if you do back it, share that you actually backed it because maybe some of your friends will copy it, and share content anyway because it does make a difference. So on that note, I'm going to give you the final word. Did I lose you?
Oh,
I'm not going to give you the final word. So anything else you would like to say, floor is yours.
sorry about that. No, and that's exactly it. It's just sharing and getting the word out. And yeah, COVID has wrecked a lot of so much. I mean, this year's been rough, just for myself, people I know. And really, the main reason I say always support indie or just small comics or small stories is because there's so many great stories out there that aren't being told that you're not going to see. But when you dive into these, the world of indie comics, you're not just going to get the traditional superhero stories that you're used to seeing. You're going to get so many different great stories you'll never hear anywhere else, and it's a great experience. And yeah, like I said, share and just try find something you enjoy. So, and I really thank you for having me on. It's been great.
I couldn't have said it any better myself, and I completely agree with that. So on that note, it's a wrap.
Thank you. Have a good one.